Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, and experience from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted to have a conversation with Abeba Birhane. Abeba, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Abeba, let me briefly introduce you to our audience. You are a cognitive scientist researching AI accountability.
Mhm.
You have a very international background by education,
Mm.
where you come from, first in Ethiopia, then the UK, and you're now in Dublin, Ireland, where you're the principal investigator of the Trinity College, the AI Accountability Lab. Before that, you worked at Untrustworthy AI at Mozilla.
Mhm.
Also worthwhile to mention, you have over 30 scientific papers on your name. And actually, I think that's a good start right now to begin with. And we'll cover all the things all the people you've met and all the prizes later, how that fits in. But could you maybe first take us through your journey um, from Ethiopia, London, Dublin?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a very kind of interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary background. I started out back in Ethiopia. My first degree was in physics, um, but I moved into psychology, then philosophy, then cognitive science. So I feel like most of my life I have just been, going around collecting degrees. Um, and my PhD is also technically in cognitive science, but around halfway through my PhD, I changed lab. I was in the supervised by a cognitive scientist initially, but I was finding work around, evaluating AI systems, looking into and auditing training data. I found that sort of work much more interesting than working on, another computational model of what, problem solving might look like. So eventually I have moved more and more into the AI and more particularly kind of testing and evaluating and vetting existing AI systems. And yeah, that's where most of my research is at the moment.
Okay. What makes it so interesting for you?
Um, I actually got into this space not because I was eager or I was
Mhm.
interested, but because I was during my PhD, I worked in a lab, mostly my colleagues doing kind of machine learning work, building systems, building bots, uh, and building various types of models. And I was watching them do that with where a lot of the attention is paid on the model itself, um, data sets, training data, which I think is really critical component, which is the backbone of AI systems. Um, People weren't paying that much attention, so that's how I was kind of poking around people's work, and I was seeing all kinds of interesting things, and that's how really I got into kind of auditing and vetting what's in your data set, how was it collected, how is it organized, because all these factors affect, the performance of your model. They affect, how well your model does or not. So I was interested in kind of these background processes and vetting these assumptions rather than just adding another model.
Okay. Now, AI, I would say also for the general public is very much, I would say, a hot topic. And
Yeah.
there is concern about the use of AI. To what extent does your work take away those concerns people might have? And maybe what are the big concerns?
Yeah, I guess when you are really kind of spending day in and day out, kind of sifting through training data sets or, looking at code or looking at various processes that play into these models. I guess most of your core, your concerns is is it, how likely is it to fail? Where is the bug?
Mhm.
Most of the time, you actually spend kind of debugging and cleaning up rather than
Okay.
the systems running itself. So I guess the bigger picture, on the one hand, as a practitioner, there are things that keep you preoccupied, mostly fixing bugs,
Mhm.
but also if you zoom out, if I step out and look at the AI landscape, I would say a lot of what we know about AI, especially for the general public, is mostly kind of misinformation and misleading information about what AI is and what are the kind of things we should worry about. You have over the past number of years, you have these, hypothetical ideas around AI systems that might get out of control, that might lead to human extinction, and so on. A lot of these are, even though, they are raised by, some of them are raised by, so-called experts. A lot of these are really hypothetical, kind of speculative, ideology-driven concerns rather than concerns that have any scientific backing.
Yeah, I understand. I hear what you're saying. There's a lot of emotions involved, although a couple of those people making those claims, those are quite well-renowned scientists. Stephen Hawking, the late Stephen Hawking was one of them. So
I, yeah.
I see what you're getting at, but then again,
Yeah, yeah. Stephen Hawking, even within
yeah,
within our own AI field, you have
yeah,
people, notable people, people that were that have done important work in, developing various techniques such as,
yeah,
back propagation, machine learning techniques. They have come out and kind of regurgitated these ideological concerns based on misconception. Um, but I mean, it doesn't, people like Stephen Hawking's, they have done stellar job. They are, some of the most notable scientific minds of the century. You can respect them for the kind of specific theory that, I mean, if I want to know about black holes or, some kind of theories around physics, I would definitely read Stephen Hawking. If I want to learn about, concerns about AI safety or concerns that might arise from AI systems, Stephen Hawking or people that have developed machine learning techniques or backpropagation are not the people I'd go to. I go to the people who actually study, the limitations and the faults and the ins and outs of AI systems,
yeah,
people whose expertise is in scientifically evaluating how well these systems perform.
yeah.
So those people I can still have my respect for their respected fields. But I you can still reject some of the issues they are raising because it's not really based on any
Yeah.
scientific grounded knowledge, but rather it's based on speculation.
And I think in general, your observation that being a worldwide expert in one field does not make you a worldwide expert in another field. And that's what you have to take into account. So don't be distracted from somebody's position when somebody makes a statement, which, yeah,
Exactly.
very fair point. Now, I also saw that your lab is looking at challenging and dismantling societal historical inequalities, power
Mhm.
asymmetries. Um, could you give us a couple examples and what you hope to achieve by dismantling that?
Yeah, so the kind of work we do at the Accountability Lab is we're a group of,
Yeah,
scientists, legal experts, people that come from all kinds of disciplinary background. The lab is built on the vision, on top of the vision that, AI systems have to be transparent, and the people that are the vendors and the people that are, developing and deploying these systems, they have to be accountable, they have to be answerable for, any of the failures or any of the issues that arise with the deployment of AI systems. Currently, there is absolutely zero transparency. Things like, training data, as I mentioned earlier, is the backbone of AI systems, but no AI company ever opens up or shares even a slice of their data, a sample of their data. Even AI companies, for example,
Yeah.
they do regular testing and evaluating of their systems using various benchmark data they set up. They don't share the benchmark data, they don't share benchmark results. So the entire and another aspect is, energy consumption and water use for data centers. So information like this is extremely obscured. Companies and people go out of their way to hide the existence of this information. So at the moment, the AI field feels like it's built on secrecy.
Yeah.
We need transparency because science, one of the pillars of science is transparency. You have to be able to see other people's code and results, to replicate that, to see whether it's valid or not. So we are trying to bring kind of a culture of transparency, accountability, and openness into the AI space so that there is enough information for people like me to do testing and evaluating of AI systems before they are released into the world.
Yeah, I see. I hear where you're coming from. Now, who is your audience? Who do you want to influence with this research? Or is that maybe
Initially,
is that actually an invalid question? Is this thinking about influencing people or is just observing? But then
it's a
again,
good
yeah,
question, actually. It's a good question. So, back in the, say, early days of my PhD, I would have worked with, if I was auditing training data, I would reach out to the data curators or those that are managing the data, and I would communicate with them, look, we found all these problems. Please do something about it. I also worked in industry. I was in DeepMind for a bit. I strongly believed that you have to work, used to believe rather, you have to work with those that are developing and deploying systems to identify problems so that they can be fixed. However, over time, I have realized that that's not a strategy that works because, people or AI companies, they don't respond to this kind of nudging.
yeah.
They tend to respond to, outrage or when there is something on the line that impacts their reputation, for example. So I no longer cater for, AI companies or those that are developing these systems. I am much more interested in um, kind of making demystifying what AI is because there is a lot of mystification. There is a lot of intentional kind of
Okay.
using obscure, jargony language, misleading language. I'm interested in ensuring that everybody, because everybody is impacted by AI, whether you like it or not. I'm interested in ensuring that people have the right information, people have independent scientific information so that they can make their own assessment, so they can make their own judgments, and so that they can demand better.
So, what stages are you looking for to share that insight or that perspective?
I mean, well, as an academic, we tend to, for academics, it's, academic publication or scientific papers are the currency of academia. So we do the work. Usually we publish in scientific venues, conferences. Sometimes that work, our findings are picked up by media and journalists. They tend to, when that happens, they tend to kind of get around to a large number of people. So we don't also, directly cater for people, but rather we hope that our work becomes relevant and interesting to everyday people. That's what we aspire for.
Okay. So okay, you're doing research about, let's say, the concerns of AI. Um, Still, AI itself for you, do you see this as something good, something which is good for humanity, for people, or evil? So, what's your take on that? How do you, yeah, reflect on what AI can bring us or not?
Um, so from that question, what I find the most interesting is what us or we refers to. Um, I think over the past
Yeah.
decade, we are experiencing the AI revolution, as they say. Uh, and certainly, some people in some organizations, in some corporations have gotten wealthier, much more influential. Take a look at, the wealthiest, most influential companies now over the past decade. It's all big tech, Amazon, Google, Meta, um, um, Netflix, and you name it. You, however, this is kind of taking over traditional wealthy companies like, automotive companies or, supermarket chains or food chains. Um, However, if you look at the world at large, um, AI has actually brought a lot more invasive surveillance. The ubiquitous application and deployment of AI has resulted in surveilled states. Look at the US. It's a really good example. They are connecting data from everywhere to kind of to identify people that they disagree ideologically with. They are using AI systems and data to arrest people, to deport people. Um, but also, we are seeing, people that have gone to jail because of errors in facial recognition systems. And recently, AI companions, these are, supposed to be chatbots that are supposed to help us, talk to us, be our friends, and so on. We are seeing, and, ever more every day, there are more people that are committing suicide, given instructions by these chatbots and so on. So whether AI is benefiting or harming us depends in, we have to break down what us or we is. It certainly is making, a handful of corporations richer and more powerful. The companies like Google have become untouchable now. But also it's making a lot more people miserable, especially people at the margins of society tend to be disproportionately impacted, negatively impacted by AI systems.
Do you think that your voice, your concerns you're expressing right now, get equal attention as all those organizations claiming, oh, look, this is going to be so good for you. See what you can benefit from that.
So the kind of marketing and PR companies like Google do is very nuanced. They spend so much money lobbying regulators, for example, to kind of so that existing regulations can't be watered down. In fact, even regulations like, the AI Act are under threat now.
Mhm.
They spend so much money funding policy workers, think tanks that then influence, the general public's understanding of AI, that then influence, various bodies that are supposed to oversee AI development and deployment. Um, and the media has also tends to kind of because there is massive excitement around AI, the media tends to kind of echo and repeat what these companies say without demanding where is the evidence,
Mhm.
based on what are you claiming this. So we have kind of lost our critical faculty at the moment, and we are in the midst of AI hype. So hype is much more normalized, much more kind of disseminated across the population, whereas critical takes like mine tend to be at the margin. And say like 5 years ago, research or takes like mine would have been normal. But now, because we have regressed politically, we have gotten so much pushback. We are kind of cornered now. Our voices are, I'm glad that I have this platform
Yeah.
to speak here, but our voice is really kind of buried at the moment because we are because of also the current political climate that really that really um, that favors big tech in their influence in their finances.
Okay. Now, a couple of questions here. Then I want to move on to another slightly other topic, which I'm interested in to discuss with you. Um, because you manage the AI Accountability Lab. So who at the end of the day should be held accountable, and who has the power, the influence to enforce accountability?
That's a really good question. So at the AI Accountability Lab, we believe that accountability has to account for, power asymmetries and, the uneven distribution of harms and benefits. So, as I mentioned earlier, harms and benefits are distributed unevenly. The benefits tend to disproportionately go to the handful of companies and corporations and tech CEOs, whereas the harms tend to kind of dribble down or tend to be suffered or by the majority or people that might divert from the norm in terms, sexually, ethnically, in terms of their ability and so on. So accountability then has to go to those that are benefiting the most from this and to those that are developing and deploying these systems. The onus is on them to ensure that the AI systems actually work properly and the AI systems that they release
Okay.
are vetted and tested thoroughly. Think of like a medical device, for example. You will not get approval to release it into the world before it has gone through various rigorous testing and it has to abide by so many standards. We don't have anything like that in AI. So accountability and answerability has to go to those that are making AI systems and making money out of it.
And who's going to enforce this?
In theory, it was supposed to be regulators, but currently, I mean, regulators are very much aligned with the ideologies of the AI companies. So, and even though we have existing regulations, we don't have enforcement. It's up to each and every one of us to demand better. There has to be, the regulators have to see pressure from the population. They have to see the demand from people to enforce existing roles. And this is why at the AI Accountability Lab, we aspire to provide information to the general population so that people can know what, the ins and outs of AI, how it works, where its limitations are, and so that they can demand better.
Good. Hey, I'm going to move on to a different topic, Abeba. Just wondering, what inspires you? What drives you? Anything about you can share with that about that question?
Yeah, for sure. I am a researcher at heart. I love doing research. I'm in my elements. I am the happiest when I'm actually doing research. But on top of that, I am driven by and I am really passionate about, holding, AI vendors and AI companies to a better standard than we are at the moment. And I'm also yeah, I currently, even as an academic, because of the ubiquitous application of AI, academic standards, academic integrity, and qualities of scientific work are deteriorating,
Okay.
especially with the introduction of generative AI. So I'm passionate about, ensuring science remains open, transparent, and as accountable as possible. Those
Any
are the kind of values that drive me.
any role models there?
Yeah, plenty, plenty.
Yeah. So who are the top three role models in your life?
So Ruha Benjamin, she is a professor at Princeton. Sophia Noble, I think she's at UCLA. Timnit Gabru, she's the director of the DARE Institute. And other people who may not be that famous, colleagues and friends like Ria Kaluri. She may not be as high profile, but those are the type of people that are my role model.
Okay. It's actually quite interesting that you immediately come with these names, which also tie to your field, which
Yeah.
I can very much appreciate. Actually, I was expecting another answer because I was looking online and a picture which take was taken by you with the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, yeah, the Dalai Lama. Yeah, I also met the Pope
Yeah.
recently as well.
Wow.
I think
How does one meet the Dalai Lama? How does one meet the Pope? What happened?
so which one do you want to hear first?
Well, first the Dalai Lama. Started off with.
Yeah, so the Dalai Lama, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a cognitive scientist by training, and I come from an area of CogSci called embodied cognitive science. So, embodied cognitive science is a relatively new field in CogSci, maybe about 40 years old now. And embodied cognitive science is built on, it's a cross-disciplinary field built on, embodiment, theories of embodiment, philosophical theories that go back to, Merleau-Ponty, Heidegger, and so on. It also the embodied coxi also takes from areas such as complex systems thinking. This is like chaos theory in nonlinear dynamics and so on within the physics space. It also has inherited a lot of kind of metaphysical assumptions from Eastern philosophy, most importantly Buddhism. So the earlier founders of embodied coxi, like Francisco Valera, yeah, decades ago established this platform, this conveying space where monks, Buddhist monks, practitioners, and embodied cognitive scientists would get together and convene and have a discussion about, what's cognition, what's life, what's human. Those kind of conversations have run for a long time, and now that community this is where the Dalai Lama comes in from the Buddhist tradition, and now every year they have these convenings. Now they are bringing in kind of newer cognitive scientists and AI researchers like myself. And that platform was a discussion for kind of, yeah, bringing together, religious or Buddhist monks and academics and so on. With the Pope, the Vatican also has started to host a yearly convening on numerous topics, and I think this year they have about 12 different topics, and one of them was around AI. So they assembled a working group for AI, and they put 12 scientists together. I was one of them. You have Jeffrey Hinton, Joshua Bengio, Stuart Russell, and other famous godfathers. And we actually worked at the Vatican. They actually take the most out of us. We were locked in a room writing this declaration, and then we presented it to the Pope, which he signed.
Wow. That's amazing that you have that opportunity, but also these back-to-back interaction also makes me wonder. Um, do you see that as a concern or a positive that you see religion spending so much time on this technology? I cannot remember any other technology, at least in the recent years, which got so much attention from religion. Is there anything you read into that?
I think because AI has become one of the pillars, it has, it's integrated literally in everything we do, in everyday practices. Take large
Yeah.
institutions, they can't operate without, the foundations, without the infrastructure of big tech and AI systems. So whether you are large institute like a university
Yeah.
or the Vatican, or whether you are just an ordinary person, AI is part of your life. So I think whether it's the Vatican or other large institute or just an individual, having a balanced information about AI and knowing about AI, discussing AI and learning about how it's impacting you, what's your agency, what are the things you can do, what are the things that you are in control of. So these are all important questions that each and every one of us have to be familiar with and have to know. So from that perspective, the Vatican, just like any other large institute, being eager and wanting to learn more is actually a good idea.
Good. Hey, we've almost run out of time, Abeba. I'm really sorry about that because it's moving so fast, the time. Um, can you maybe finish with your ideas? What's your life goal, or maybe how do you want people to see you, remember you?
Oof,
What's your personal brand?
that is a big question. I haven't thought about me. I haven't thought about my personal brand. I haven't thought about me having a brand. I don't know. I, uh, Yeah, as I said, I'm a researcher at heart. I aspire to produce work that inspires people, that is relevant to people, that is actually helpful to people. Then, if any brand emerges from that, let it be. But I don't think I'm actively building a brand, or I haven't even thought about what my brand is.
Okay, fair point. But Abeba Birhane, your research is um, answering some very important, relevant questions. Given the attention you're getting around the world, it proves it is important. So again, I'm very happy that on behalf of the brand called you've willing to share your insights, your concerns, your thoughts with us. And yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
anything last final comments before we have to say goodbye?
It's been such a great pleasure talking to you. Yeah, I appreciate this time. Thank you.
Abeba Birhane, thank you so much for joining the brand called you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.